All right, so in this lecture, we're going to be talking about atmospheric perspective. So far, we've learned about different types of point perspective from 1 point to 3 point, but there's another way that you can illustrate or suggest perspective in an image, and that's through atmospheric perspective. Atmospheric perspective is when you look out across a long stretch of land and you can see that the things that are farther away begin to appear lighter and slightly more blue, while the things that are closer appear to be more high contrast, darker values, and closer to their natural color. Now, the reason this happens is because even though air seems to be transparent, it actually does have a little bit of opaqueness to it. But it's sort of like water. If you have a cup of water, or maybe say a cup of apple juice, for example, it seems to look a lot lighter than the whole entire jug of apple juice. And same thing with the atmosphere. The thicker the atmosphere is, the more that this effect will be apparent. And the farther away something gets, the more atmosphere there is between you, the viewer, and the object that you're looking at. So henceforth, it creates a lighter, more desaturated sort of look. So you can see in this image, the things in the foreground, like the water and this very first hill, they're really dark. They have a lot of saturation. They're rich in value. And as it slowly moves back, the next hill becomes a little more blue and a little less saturated, a little lighter value. The next one even further back, same thing, until we get to the one in the very, very back. It's almost the same color as the sky. Okay, so that's what you want to be able to accurately portray in your art. It's not enough to just have point perspective, because even if you have that painted accurately, if everything is the same value, the same saturation, it's going to kind of feel weird and look off, maybe even have a little bit of this uncanny, cartoony vibe, even though you're trying to paint realistically. Let's look at some other examples. If we come over here, here's one of a canyon. So you can see in the foreground, we have the rocks that are orangish, sort of red color. And then as things move back in space, it gets to be lighter and lighter and lighter and closer to the color of the sky. Till all the way in the background, you can see that plateau back there. It's completely blue. And if we pick our color picker here, we can even color pick that and you'll see it is blue. It's on the teal spectrum, while the original actual rock color is orange. But as it moves its way back, we get closer and closer to the blue. So let's watch our color picker as we do this. Here we have orange, okay? If I move to the next layer, okay, you can see that it started to become much more saturated. If we go in the shadow area, it's even green. It's moved from orange to green. Then we go back another layer. We'll come back down to here. It's gotten even more green, which is interesting, right? Because our original color of the rock, we know in our head this rock is orange. But as it moves farther and farther away, this slider here of our hue is slowly going to start moving closer and closer and closer to the blue. We can even, let's try the lighter color. This one is still in the orange and the light, but it's gotten way more desaturated. And then as we keep going further and further back, you can see it's even more closer to the blue until we get all the way up here. We're really tealish, sort of mint green. And then all the way to the very, very back, it's in the blue finally, all the way from orange. Okay, so let's look at one last example here before we do our little exercise. And you can see in this one, this is a cityscape. In the foreground, we have a lot of high contrast and a lot of different values. We have this green grass, we have all these windows that have a lot of nice contrast from the dark value to light values, but the further back we go in the city, the less contrast there is. The windows don't get as dark as they would or as they do in the foreground. You can see the darkest it really gets here is this sort of blue color, while the windows in the foreground are almost black. And that's because the atmosphere in between is sort of obscuring our vision, and so we're having to look through the thickness of the atmosphere. And the same with the green. You can see the green in this foreground is a really saturated, rich green. And then back here, the green is actually a blue. And because of the colors around it, and because we can tell that it's supposed to be the same object as what's in the foreground, our brain still perceives it as green, but you can see when we actually color pick it, it's blue. It doesn't even register in the green hue section. And then when we go really far back, all the way back here to these objects, for example, you can see that they're all just shades and variations of the color blue as they get closer and closer to the skyline. And the darkest value you get is way up there in the top half of our value range. It's not even close to being towards mid-tone, even though these ones up here, these darker buildings, they're well below the mid-tone range. Okay, so Let's practice trying to apply this in an image. So we're going to go ahead and come up here. Here's the example, and we're going to go ahead and replicate this. So the best way to do this, we're going to make a new layer here really quick. And we're going to start by filling this layer. We're going to get our bucket tool. We're going to use this light blue that we have up here. You can see our color picker. It's really light, nice sky blue. And with our paint bucket tool, we're just going to fill in the entire layer. Now, you can do whatever you want, but I think it will be fun to use one of these sort of special effects brushes from the packs that we recommend you can download. Let's see if we can find a good one here. Let's go with this one. Looks good, I think. Forest Fog. All right, and next what we're gonna do, the first layer, we're gonna start out with a really close to the skyline color. We're gonna move that a little bit more saturated, and we're gonna move this a little bit more towards the green, because that's what the end object actually is. The tree itself, we're gonna think of that as what our target is. So the farther away in the distance, the more blue it gets, and the closer to the viewer, the more accurate to its original color it gets. And also, because we're thinking about perspective, the trees in the background are going to appear smaller than the trees in the foreground. So we're gonna go ahead and keep our brush pretty small here. And we're going to start painting these in the background. So for this assignment, what I don't really want you to worry about the trees themselves or whatever brush you're using. I want you to focus on the color picking part. I want you to focus on thinking about how to choose what your next color is going to be based off of how far away it is in the distance and stuff. That's the concept I want you to take away. So let's go ahead and move on to the next sort of row of trees. We're going to bring it a little bit more closer to green and a little bit more saturated, a little bit darker value. And as you go, you can bring your brush size up just a little bit as well. And just start working it closer and closer and closer towards the viewer. Now keep in mind that the clearer the sky is, let's say it's a really, there's really low humidity, really bright sun, midday, this effect is going to be lessened. It will still be there, but you'll have to go a lot farther distance for things to start to fade as much. On a foggy or cloudy day or somewhere where it's really humid, this is going to happen much quicker and it'll be a lot more visible. For example, in this scene we're creating here, it's going to look sort of like we're in a misty or foggy sort of forest. While if we were to sort of lessen this and have it get to the more bright values a lot quicker, it would feel like a much clearer day. So let's go ahead and bring our brush size up a little bit. And do that next layer there. Okay, same thing. A little bit more saturated, a little darker, a little bit more green. And then our brush size up just a bit. Okay, same thing, a little bit more dark, a little more saturation, a little greener, and brush size a little bigger. And we'll just keep continuing this process. More saturation, darker value, more green, bigger brush, and repeat that until you kind of get all the way to the end of the page and you have it all filled up. We'll probably have about one more pass at this, maybe two, greener, darker. And as you get closer, the jumps in value are going to be a little bit bigger. The farther away, it's going to feel subtle. The closer you get, the more prominent the unnoticeable that transition is going to become. Bring it down, more green. We're getting almost to the yellow green now. And that's actually probably a bit too big for our brush size. There you go. That is the finished assignment there. It's pretty simple. What your job is to do is just replicate this. If you really want to get a better grasp of this, you can do this a couple times and try using different colors. Instead of just using trees, just try simple mountain slopes or hills. And instead of picking green, maybe use orange and see how that slowly changes as it gets closer to blue, or red or purple, whatever it is you want. Try it with different colors because different environments are going to have different colors, whether you're in a canyon with a lot of red rock or oceanscape where it's already blue. I want you to try experimenting where you can see how it goes from a light desaturated blue or from whatever color originally is to a light desaturated blue. So practice, post in the Q&A, post in the Facebook group. We'd love to see what you come up with and give you feedback on your work. And that'll be it for this lecture. I will see you guys in the next one.